Hello and welcome to our workshop on PsycINFO. My name is Christine Forche. I am the STEM and Psychology and Counseling Librarian here at UT Tyler. PsycINFO is one of our most sought after databases if we look at our statistics for what people are looking for. So we thought that that might be a good reason to want to give you some more information on how it works. One of the ways to get there, if you're on our library website, is just to click on database by title, and that will take you over to that. And you'll notice that over here on popular databases, APA PsycINFO is right at the top. You can also find it on this first section on the A page if you scroll down a bit. And you can also go by subject and look for psychology and counseling, and it will be the top listed one there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click into PsycINFO. You'll notice on the interface here that this is one of our EBSCO databases. You may recognize that logo if you've used some of their other databases. These have a lot of ways that you can manipulate your searches and find things that you're looking for, and some other cool things that I'll show you here in a minute. I am going to sign in. So you don't have to do this. Most of our databases will have a way that you can sign in or create an account. That has nothing to do with getting you access, like if you're off campus or anything. We're going to have one of these. It's just a way for you to keep up with your searches. You can store articles in there, save your searches and come back to them and rerun them. Keep your search history in there. So it's a way that you might want to use to kind of keep track of your research. You don't have to. I just like to. So, all right. So our interface starts with our search boxes, just like every other database, and we are in the advanced search. So you'll notice that there are different spots there that you can look in. If you scroll down, there are a lot of search options that you can use to manipulate your search before you even run it. I will get to some of that here in a few minutes, but I just wanted to let you know that all of that is there. And I am going to go ahead and just do a search. Now, when you are coming up with your terms to use, you may want to look at specific terms from a textbook or an article that you're reading, or you may just use common terms. So like I have ADHD or ADHD, and you'll notice in the searches here, it comes up ADD or ADHD or attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I'm going to use that. Now, when we combine those search terms with or, what we're saying is the article may mention any of these search terms. And I am just doing this in the broadest possible way. I'm going to come back and show you why here in a moment. And let's go ahead and just run that search. So, of course, we come up with 104,000 results. Kind of a lot. I don't want to sift through over 100,000 search results. I don't know anybody who does. So there are ways that we can narrow this down. You can look over here on the left, and of course, there are ways to refine your search. You can change the search date. A lot of times when we are doing research, we want to find things that were published within the last 5 or 10 years, make sure that what we're coming up with is timely. You may be interested only in academic journals, although please don't discount what you can learn from dissertations and books and different things like that. And you can see over here, if you pop that up, if I were to narrow it down to academic journals, that would take us down to 83,000. So those numbers will tell you how many results you'll get from using that limiter. One thing you can do, if you look over here, is the subject major heading. And this is a way to say, okay, I want this to be a major heading in the paper, not just mention, not just a keyword, not just something that might be in the description, but something that's actually assigned as a subject, as a major subject heading to the article. You'll notice if we do attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity, that is going to give us 26,000 results. And I'm going to go ahead and click that. And then if I show more, let's see here. There are some other things that you could come up with, like if you were looking for the etiology, where does ADHD come from? Treatment outcomes, looking specifically at populations of college students, treatment effectiveness and things like that. So I am just going to stick with my ADHD as a major subject heading. You can also do a similar thing by subject, and that just means that that's part of the subject listings, not that it's a major heading, but it's part of the listings in there. You can also go down here and look at age. So maybe I'm actually interested in adult ADHD and ADD. So I'm looking at adult populations, those 18 and older, rather than children and adolescents. And you can also look at populations. So maybe I am specifically interested in female patients that are presenting with it. So now if we scroll back up, and I'm trying not to scroll too much, you'll notice that I've narrowed it down to 6,500 results, which is pretty cool. I also want to point out that if you look over here, these videos that pop up will demonstrate a problem that we may have with the way we're searching. So we don't have any identifiers or any quotation marks added to our search, which means that the search engine is just looking for those letters in that order. And you'll notice on these videos, tourist spots in Windsor add a royal twist to their offerings. Probably doesn't have anything to do with ADD or ADHD, but the word add is in there. Similarly, UNESCO threatens to add Tower of London to World Heritage and Danger List. Mind reading cat ears. Now, I really am curious about that, but we're going to save that for later. Anyway, my point being that the way that we enter our search terms into our search engine here can affect what the results are that we get. So we're looking at 6,526 results here. And I want to go back and show you over here on the search history. We can click that and it'll open it up. And this is what I mean by signing in can be useful because you can save your searches. Over here, we can look and see what were the search terms I used, what were the modifiers I used, and how many results did I get. You can also click on that link and it'll take you back into the latest results. So keep that in mind. We're going to go do something else fun. So I'm going to close the search history and I'm going to clear my search, and we're going to use another really cool tool that shows up here in PsycINFO. This is the APA Thesaurus of Psychological Index Terms. You're going to find definitions and scope notes when a term was defined or added into the psychology literature, broader and narrower terms here. So if you're struggling to find a term, you can always go over here and use the thesaurus and get some things that are the specific index terms. So I'm going to say ADHD over here and do a little browse. And you'll notice I get ADHD, but it says use attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. Okay. So I'm going to click on that, and there it is in the alphabetical list. And when I click on the link, it'll tell me the year this was introduced was 2001. So we're looking at 22 years worth of research on ADHD. The scope note is kind of a definition. It's a behavior disorder in which the essential features are signs of developmentally inappropriate inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Okay, that's the thing that I think it is. It also has a history note. In May 2006, this term replaced the discontinued term minimal brain disorders, and minimal brain disorders was removed from all records. So you will use attention deficit disorder and hyperkinesis to access records prior to 2001. Now, what this means, we are always learning and always developing, and there are search terms that may have been used in the past that we now realize are harmful or biased. So we refresh our vocabulary and learn things about the disorders that we're talking about. I would wager that that may happen to ADHD at some point in time. So those history notes can give you an idea of, oh, something I was reading about in a history of psychology book. Why am I not finding anything about it now? Well, here's a reason why you wouldn't find. We've changed the terminology that we're using. You'll also see broader terms. So that goes to attention deficit disorder, because the with hyperactivity is a narrower term. And then related terms. So we have attention span, distractibility, hyperactivity, impulsiveness, mental disorders, and oppositional defiant disorder. So what that means is those terms are often indexed together. They often, in the case of ODD, you might have comorbidities that are frequent with this. And then it's telling you that it is used for ADHD and minimal brain disorders. So we can add this to our search by clicking on the box here. And we can also say that we want it to be a major concept by clicking this box here, and we're going to add it to our search. Now, in the beginning, I was also looking at that attention deficit disorder. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. You'll notice the term was introduced in 1985, and the scope note, it's a disorder characterized by persistent, developmentally inappropriate inattention and impulsivity. It has the broader term neurodevelopmental disorders. Narrower term was that attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. And not surprisingly, a lot of the related terms are the same ones that you would see in the attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity category. So I'm going to click there. And I also want it to be a major concept. And I want to add this to my search. Now I am going to use or here. That's the default, because I want to find either one of these terms as a major concept that's in the paper. And now we're going to do a little search here. So you'll notice that I came up with 28,133 results this time. And I don't have any of my limiters on here. So let's open our search history and we can see how this compares. Our first search with the ADAD or ADHD or attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder was 104,000 results. When we use the specific subject terms found in the thesaurus and make them major concepts, that already narrows down our results to 28,000. We've cut it in a quarter. So using those big terms can really help narrow the focus and make sure that the results that you're getting are going to be relevant to what you were searching for. So I'm going to pause for a minute. Are there any questions about how I put together these search terms? Looking good. Okay. So when we look at this search, I'm going to close our search history. We can also narrow things back down over here. And let's talk about our search results themselves. We'll pretend that we've narrowed things down and that we're actually only looking at a few hundred sources here and see what we can get to. You'll notice as we're scrolling through our results that there's a lot of borrow from another library, borrow from another library. And there don't seem to be any links to full text in here very often. That is because PsycINFO is what we call an index. So if you think about looking at a catalog for a store, it's kind of an index of the things that they have in the store or that exist that they could get for you. It's not going to be the actual things that are in here. PsycINFO collects citations that are about psychology and behavioral sciences and indexes them here so that you can search for them more easily. If anybody's ever tried to do a Google search or even a Google Scholar search for scholarly literature, sometimes it's really overwhelming because it's searching across all of the internet and not just one specific thing. Whereas looking at PsycINFO, you've taken all of the information about psychology and behavioral sciences, most anyway, it's definitely the largest that we have access to. And you've pulled them all together in this one big catalog that you can now search for. When you are in PsycINFO, if you see that borrow from another library, you can click on it and it'll take you to the login space for interlibrary loan. And if you already have an interlibrary loan account set up, it'll fill in the form for you. You can submit that and you can look for the results there. Sorry, I have to move something here. I'm going to close that out. You can also open up the results of the article here and look at the abstract. Abstracts are super important to decide whether this is something that you would even want to request through interlibrary loan to begin with. You'll see our keywords, and of course, the one that we search for is in bold. Anytime you're doing a search, that'll happen. You can see down here where it's listed as subjects. These are subjects that PsycINFO has indexed this article to. So it has, you'll notice the little star here. That means that it is a major concept or a major subject heading within that article. And this one has not just the ADD and ADHD, but it also has dopamine antagonists, mental disorders, and placebo. So right there, because there's a placebo, I'm thinking, oh, this probably has something to do with a pharmaceutical intervention. There's also the diagnostic and statistical manual, safety, treatment effectiveness, and evaluation. So those are all of the subjects that you can find. These will differ a little bit from the keywords. The subjects, there are people and or computer programs that very specifically decide what the subjects are. And like the thesaurus, when we were looking at it, had those use for, they will say, here is a whole pool of terms that would all fall under this one term. So they will index them that way. It's just what we call a controlled vocabulary, so that we're making sure that the scope note matches what's really about, what the article is really about. The difference with these keywords is these are often provided by the publisher or the author, and they may or may not match up completely to the subject terms that we have available. So, excuse me. You'll also notice there are that this had randomized control trials. So now we know what kind of article that we're looking at. It's going to be a randomized control trial. And down here, if you scroll, there's a clinical trial number. Those you can match up, look at the, I'm going to open that link. You can match those up and see, like, what was the clinical trial actually for? So this was looking at desotraline. Here are the locations. It was in Arizona, Arkansas, California, and 56 more locations. And that it has been completed. So just gives you a little more information on those. And you also have a DOI. Now I am going to click on this DOI. If you see one of those in one of our indexes, click on them and see what the link brings you out to. So this brings us out to where the article lives. It's in the International Clinical Psychopharmacology Journal. And you'll notice that it says, hey, do you want to subscribe or do you want to buy? Well, we don't want to do either one of those things. So we want to go back to where we have the link out to request from another library or borrow from another library and do interlibrary loan for that. Any questions about the process? Some other things that you can do on the right-hand side are some tools. You can add this to a folder. So let's say we are doing a search for a specific paper and we want to create a folder so that we can store all of our articles in that one spot. You can do that. You can print the citation, you can email the citation, especially important if you're working in groups. You can save it. It will give you an option to cite it. I always say be careful with these. They tend to have the right information in the right order, but you kind of have to watch out sometimes for the capitalization and the punctuation to make sure those things are correct. This one's looking pretty good. Sometimes they're not 100%. So you can get your citations there. You can also export the citation. So if you use something like RefWorks or Mendeley, EasyBib, Zotero, you can export there. You can also export this to PsyWheel, which is the citation manager that we have full support for. And that would be the same thing because you want it in that RIS format. You can also create notes in here. So this is where being signed in could be helpful because you can add a note on the article and then come back to it later. And it'll give you a permalink. Now, this is super important because you'll notice the beginning of this URL says easy proxy. That means that if you use this link, the person who receives the article will have to log in with their UT Tyler credentials. And that's great, especially if you're sending it to a faculty member or to another student in one of your project groups. That means that they are going to get to the right version of this citation that belongs to UT Tyler and not just some random EBSCO host thing is going to pop up saying, sorry, you don't have access. So if you're going to share, like maybe you want to make a list of citations that you're sharing with somebody, definitely use the permalink version instead of just like copying and pasting the URL up here. Right. I have a question, yes.
So the OneDrive, you can save that to your OneDrive as well?
Yes, but I haven't really done much with that.
So I've never used that either, but I'm genuinely curious.
Let's see what it does. So of course we have access to OneDrive, and this will allow you to go in there and it's going to say, hey, this app wants to do all these things. You can say yes, you can say no. I mean, obviously, EBSCO is one of our vendors that our legal department has cleared. So they, they help us write the checks for that. So I don't think we're going to get in trouble for wanting to say, yes, EBSCO can keep this. And then it's saved into OneDrive. We'll have to go back to this in a minute and see if we can figure out whether it's saved. Any other questions about what's on that screen?
No.
Looking good? Okay. So that is doing some searching. Now, we kind of touched on this. The APA thesaurus of psychological index terms is going to have all of the things from the, all you can see is the database screen. Sarah, how far back did that go?
Just once you had clicked OneDrive, and so I'm sure that it did save in OneDrive, no problem. Once you clicked on OneDrive, the thing popped up at the top that, said, please wait while we connect to your OneDrive or whatever. Yeah, that. But then if anything else popped up for the computer itself, that was not seen. I'm sure that that was just a screen asking for permissions, if I understood correctly. Okay, yeah.
Yes. Okay. My apologies that pop-up didn't show up as well. The pop-up that came up was just a list of permissions that EBSCO wants permission to send this to your OneDrive. Do you accept? So that was what popped up there. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
All right. Now going back to new search, we've talked a little bit about these articles that live in other places. Sorry, I'm going to go over to my search history for a minute. And using that link that says borrow from another library, but you'll notice there's a lot of them that don't have that information. If I click on one of these, and there doesn't seem to be a specific way to get to the full text of the article, click on that DOI down at the bottom. And much like the other DOI, it's going to take us out to where that article lives. And let's see what comes up. So the Journal of Attention Disorders, because I am on campus and because we have access to this, and it doesn't seem, oh, because this is an open access journal, I can just download the PDF and have the full text of the article there. So using those DOIs is important. Let me see if I can find another one. Sometimes the DOI takes you out there and it's not an open access article. So let's try this. Well, I'm not going to go through 28,000, but maybe I'll do like one or two more. Okay, well, these were all open access, so that's great. But in the case that they weren't open access and you did get to a page that says, hey, you need to request this, there is a way that you can double check that because it doesn't always know. I always copy the title of the article and go back over to the library website and insert the title in swoop search and do a search. Because there's a possibility that it's actually something that we would have access to. In this case, it does not look like it. I'm going to expand the search to include no full text. And there is the article right up at the top. And then if I click on that check for availability, it will direct me over to Interlibrary Loan. So in that case, it was right, but you can always double check that by copying the title of the article and going and putting it in swoop search. Now, the last cool thing I want to show you here, close some stuff out. We're searching in PsycINFO, and as I mentioned, that's the database that we're using, but we have several psychology databases available from EBSCO, and you can, click on choose databases up here where it says where we're searching and take a look. So we have APA PsycINFO, but we can also click on APA Psych Articles, which is going to be a place where more full text is going to live. There is the, excuse me, family studies abstracts. So sometimes you might, especially with psychology and counseling, you may want to include that. Clicking on the arrow will tell you what that database indexes. So they are bibliographic records covering essential areas related to family studies, including marriage, divorce, family therapy, and other areas of key relevance to the discipline. So there's a good chance that that could have some information for you. We also have, scrolling up over here, there is a psychology and behavioral sciences collection. If you click on the arrow, Sarah, is that pop-up showing?
Yes.
Okay. If you click on the arrow, that will have the description there. So it's a comprehensive database covering information concerning topics in emotional and behavioral characteristics, psychiatry and psychology, mental processes, blah, blah, blah. This is the world's largest full-text psychology database offering full-text coverage for nearly 400 journals. So throwing that in there, and then I'm going to say, okay. Excuse me. So now you'll notice up here, instead of just saying PsycINFO, if I click show all, we're going to be doing a search through all of those different databases. The negative part here is that we lost our direct access to the psychology, the thesaurus of psychological index terms, but it is here under subjects. It has also added a thesaurus of psychological and behavioral sciences collection subjects. So because those are two different databases, one of them is APA, one of them is not, you have two different thesauri that you can search for search terms. Now, going back over here to my search history, I am going to rerun this search. And before we had, well, it's still pretty similar, 28,855. I think it was like 28,300 something. So we have added to the number of results we got. We're still seeing borrow from another library, but we're probably also going to see a lot more PDF full text because we have added full text databases in here. And of course, there's some more. I'm not seeing as many right here on the first page, but you can definitely get to more of the full text there. And if you like, you can scroll back up here and look, and it'll tell you where the databases came from. So we had the 28,133 from PsycINFO, but Psych Articles added 722 results into our search. And if I click on that, it'll narrow it down to just those articles. So I'm still keeping my search open to all of the databases, but I have narrowed down the results to just get to those from the Psych Articles, and they are all going to have full text. That makes sense?
That makes sense.
Awesome. Are there any questions? Okay. That is pretty much what I have to show you for PsycINFO. It's a really, really rich tool and can be made richer by adding those other databases in there to help. If you do come up with any questions, I'm going to go back over here to the library page for a minute. There are research guides by subject, and within your Canvas course for your psychology and counseling classes, you will have a link that says library resources. It will take you over to our psychology and counseling guide, which looks like this. So it's going to have links to some of these resources as well as others, but there's also my contact information here. So you can reach out to me via email. You can come by my office here in the library. You can call me if you want to. You'll notice that our chat also popped up. You can click on here to do chat now. And if I'm available, whoever answers the chat can transfer the chat to me. It would be just like making a phone call, except we don't actually have to talk on the phone. And I can also do Zoom appointments as well. So if you need any help walking through any of these things, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for joining us today. There's my recording button.